Standing in her way was the woman who had already beaten her once this season. Elena Rybakina walked onto center court looking every bit the favorite.
Calm.
Focused. Unshaken by the noise surrounding Eala's remarkable rise. The contrast was striking. On one side stood a Grand Slam champion, a player who knew exactly what it felt like to lift the Wimbledon trophy. On the other stood a 21-year-old Filipina carrying the hopes of millions and trying to prove that her breakthrough season was only the beginning. From the opening games, however, something felt different. Eala was not intimidated. She wasn't playing like a wild card grateful for the opportunity. She wasn't playing like an underdog hoping to stay competitive. She was playing to win. Every return came back with purpose. Every rally became a test. Every point forced Rybakina to work. The crowd sensed it immediately. The energy inside Steffi Graf Stadium shifted. The expected script was no longer unfolding. What was supposed to be a routine victory for the world number 2 was turning into a battle. And battles are exactly where Eala has built her reputation. Again and again throughout her career, she has shown the same quality. When the pressure rises, she does not retreat. She responds. The longer the match continued, the louder the crowd became. Philippine flags waved. German fans joined the chants. The atmosphere transformed from curiosity into belief. Not belief that Eala could compete, belief that she could actually do it. Across the net, Rybakina remained composed. But even champions understand when an opponent is playing with complete conviction. This was no longer about rankings. It was no longer about experience. It was about execution. Point by point, game by game, moment by moment. The question facing the tennis world was suddenly very simple. Was Eala ready to take the final step from rising star to genuine contender? The answer was about to unfold in front of 25,000 stunned spectators. And regardless of what happened next, one thing had already become clear. Eala belonged on this stage. She belonged in matches like this. And she was no longer asking the tennis world for permission to dream bigger. She was forcing them to pay attention. I didn't expect that level. The words hung in the air. Coming from the world number 2, they carried weight. Elena Rybakina was not a player known for exaggeration. She had faced Grand Slam champions, world number 1s, and some of the most dangerous hitters in women's tennis. Yet standing in the Berlin press room after nearly 3 hours on court, she was talking about Eala. She served incredibly well. Rybakina continued. She was aggressive when she needed to be, and she made me work for every point. The statistics supported every word. For long stretches of the match, it was Eala, not the Wimbledon champion, who looked like the player dictating the action. The Filipina had pushed one of the sport's elite competitors to the edge. And perhaps most importantly, she had done it on grass. The surface that many experts once believed would be her biggest challenge was suddenly becoming one of her greatest strengths. Back in the locker room, Eala sat quietly. There were no tears, no frustration, no sense of defeat, because everyone in that room understood the truth. This was not a loss that damaged her reputation. It was a performance that elevated it. Just weeks earlier, questions surrounded her ability to compete consistently against the very best. Those questions were disappearing.
Fast.
The reaction across social media was immediate. Fans who had watched the match flooded platforms with praise. She just went toe-to-toe with a Wimbledon champion. Eala belongs in the top tier. The future isn't coming. The future is already here. Even former players began taking notice. Analysts who had previously described Eala as a promising prospect were suddenly using different language. Contender,
threat,
future Grand Slam challenger. Those labels had once seemed distant. Now, they felt inevitable. And while Rybakina advanced to the next round, the conversation after Berlin wasn't centered on the winner. It was centered on the 21-year-old Filipina who had nearly produced one of the biggest grass court upsets of the season. The rankings would eventually update. The Wimbledon seedings would be finalized. The statistics would be archived. But something more important happened in Berlin. Eala earned belief. Not just from her fans. Not just from the Philippines. From the tennis world itself. The journey was far from over. Wimbledon was still ahead. The biggest stage in tennis was waiting. And after what she showed against Elena Rybakina, nobody would be looking at Eala as an outsider anymore. They would be looking at her as a player capable of changing a tournament, maybe even changing history. Laban always. Because the next chapter was only beginning, the Wimbledon seeding race was suddenly tighter than ever. June 22nd was approaching fast. For Eala, the mathematics were simple but unforgiving. The 163 ranking points from her remarkable Eastbourne final run the previous season were about to disappear. Those points had helped push her into the conversation among the world's elite. Without replacing them, her ranking could slip at exactly the wrong moment. The difference between being seeded and unseeded at Wimbledon can change everything. A seed protects a player from facing the tournament favorites in the opening rounds. It creates breathing room, opportunity, a pathway. Without it, even the strongest contenders can find themselves staring at a top 10 opponent before the first week is over. And yet, as journalists crowded around Eala after her Berlin performance, the conversation wasn't really about rankings anymore.
It was about respect.
Because something fundamental had changed. The tennis world had spent years viewing Eala as a promising prospect, a talented junior, a future possibility. Berlin forced them to update that assessment. She was no longer a future story. She was a present reality. The evidence was impossible to ignore. A Birmingham title, a 6-match winning streak, a dominant victory over Donna Vekic, a performance that pushed one of the most dangerous grass-court players in the world to the limit. And perhaps most importantly, a growing belief that she belonged on these stages. Not as a guest, not as a feel-good story, as a legitimate threat. The German crowd seemed to understand that before anyone else. Long after the match ended, fans remained inside Steffi Graf Stadium. Some waited near the exits hoping for one last glimpse. Others simply stayed in their seats, replaying what they had witnessed. They had arrived expecting to watch Elena Rybakina. Many left talking about Eala. That is how reputations are built. Not always through victories. Sometimes through performances that reveal what is coming next. Inside the locker room, Eala's team reviewed the statistics. 22 winners. A career-best 119 miles per hour serve. Multiple breaks against one of the strongest servers in women's tennis. The numbers confirmed what their eyes had already told them. She was improving faster than almost anyone expected. Outside, the reaction continued to spread. Analysts began projecting future rankings. Former players debated her ceiling. Commentators discussed her chances at Wimbledon. The question was no longer whether Eala could compete with the elite. The question had become how soon she would join them. And somewhere in Berlin, as the lights dimmed and the crowd slowly disappeared into the night, one truth felt impossible to ignore. The loss to Elena Rybakina may have ended her Berlin Open, but it had started something much bigger. Because every breakthrough has a moment when the world finally sees what was already there. For Eala, that moment happened on a grass court in Berlin. The rankings would change. The seedings would be announced. Wimbledon would arrive. But after Berlin, nobody would be surprised to see her standing across the net from the biggest names in tennis. The future was no longer approaching. It was already here. And Eala was walking straight toward it. Laban always Eala delivered one of the most memorable performances of her career at the Berlin Open, pushing Wimbledon champion Elena Rybakina to the limit in a thrilling grass-court battle. The 21-year-old Filipina showcased fearless tennis, powerful serving, incredible shot-making, and the fighting spirit that has made her one of the fastest rising stars in women's tennis. Despite the result, Eala proved she belongs among the world's elite and sent a strong message ahead of Wimbledon. In this video, we break down Eala versus Elena Rybakina highlights, key moments from the Berlin Open showdown, the reaction from fans and tennis experts, what this performance means for Eala's Wimbledon hopes, why the tennis world is suddenly paying attention. Could this be the match that changes Eala's career forever? Subscribe to Court Legacy for daily tennis news, match analysis, player stories, and the biggest moments from the WTA Tour. Hashtag Eala, hashtag Elena Rybakina, hashtag Berlin Open, hashtag Wimbledon, hashtag WTA Tour.